Hi, I'm Byron Holland, President and CEO of CIRA, the Canadian Internet Registration Authority.
Hi, I'm Melissa Carvalho, the Vice President of Global Cybersecurity at RBC, and also the Canadian Ambassador for a nonprofit called Women in Identity.
Given your background and your insight into this space, what are you seeing as the major trends in global cybersecurity in general, but of course in Canada in specific?
It's really hard to narrow it down just to a few. Our world has just become increasingly more connected through to mass digitization, and it's underpinned by the Internet of Things, 5G, the cloud, just many, many opportunities for cyber criminals to attack individuals and organizations. And as we look at the threat landscape, it's become a moving target, and organizations need to adapt quickly. If I had to boil it down to 5 trends affecting Canadians, I would say the first one is there's an increase in cyber events. There's been a 30% increase year over the last 3 years. And when you look at these attacks or events that occur, they range from basic to the most sophisticated. Things like viruses to ransomware, malware, social engineering type attacks of phishing and smishing. The second area is an increase in cyber risk. With work from anywhere and all the new technologies, we've increased our threat landscape and then increased risk as well. A recent Cisco report showed that in 2021, they predicted 27.1 billion network devices, which was up from 17.1 billion in 2016. And so you can imagine all the opportunities for the bad actors to attack. The third area is that a single cyber event can be a game changer, especially when you look at small and medium-sized organizations. If you look at the onset of the pandemic, many of the small and medium-sized businesses were forced as a means of survival to focus on their digital transformation, and they never had a cybersecurity team. And so a single cyber event can cripple the small or medium-sized organization and put them out of business. A fourth trend that we're seeing in the marketplace is cybersecurity is only as strong as your weakest link. And so with things like the cloud, third-party solutions, and working remote, an organization is no longer confined to the network they have. And so an event at a third party, a cyber event at a third-party organization that my organization might be connected to, now means that I also have a cyber event I need to be worried about. And then finally, the fifth area is consumers are just more cyber aware. And so for those cyber savvy Canadian consumers, they're starting to ask questions like, what is your privacy policy? How many breaches have you had? And then something very near and dear to my heart is, are you really just using simple user ID and password? Because they want multi-factor authentication.
When you think about all of those elements that you just raised, the 5 factors and then all the ones within it, what are your real main concerns? If you could distill it down a little bit, like in your day-to-day, what are your main concerns about cybersecurity risk in Canada? And you touched on a bunch, but is it personal privacy, fraud, ransomware is certainly top of mind in the news media these days. What do you see as the main concern?
Cybersecurity is a very vast area, and my main concern is really in my specialization, which is a specific preventative domain of cybersecurity called identity and access management. And it's focused on an identity and what access users have. So when I think about that and I think about the trends that I just mentioned, I'm concerned about the consumers and citizens of Canada because as we pushed solutions in with lockdowns and restrictions, we didn't really think about cybersecurity. We raced to market. I'm concerned about the small and medium-sized businesses as they're struggling to stay afloat and their ability to defend against these bad actors who are targeting their weak defenses. But my major concern is for those Canadians who are not cyber savvy or who have limited access to technology. And so let me expand on this a little bit. If I think about Canadians who are not cyber savvy, I don't need to look too far. I just think about my own father, who's a senior. And so as during these lockdowns, he's tried to transact digitally online, he struggled to figure out who to trust and what not to trust from a content perspective. And so while my family worked very hard to educate him on things like phishing and when to open an email and not open an email, he was rather confused. And one of the things that happened recently was he had a fraudulent transaction occur. And so now he is so scared to do anything digitally online, and his anxiety level goes up when he has to transact online digitally. I also think about those who have limited access to technology. And so when we offer things like our vaccine bookings or our vaccine passports, we had no other choice but to do so with the only digital identification that was readily available, the health card. And so for those who didn't have access to the health card, they relied on things like the pop-up clinics and services that might have been offered to the homeless population. Diversity and inclusion is really important in cybersecurity, not only because we need to reach our customers who are so very important to us, but because the gaps it creates in the solutions cause openings and vulnerabilities that can be exploited by the bad actors.
You talked about some of the critical actors who may not be prepared. And certainly, as we have gone through the pandemic, one of the things that our organization has noticed is how many small to medium sized enterprises had to pivot online in a very short period of time in order just to simply stay in business during the pandemic. How do you feel that the small and medium enterprises are doing in terms of cybersecurity? And if they want access to that borderless world that you just talked about, how are they going to prepare themselves from a security standpoint? And what should they be doing now?
Wow, that's a lot to answer. One of the things that RBC did in 2021 is we conducted a survey specifically for small and medium-sized businesses in Canada, and we noticed a trend based on the survey results because we noticed that these small and medium-sized businesses are becoming increasingly more cognizant and concerned about cybersecurity. One of the facts in the survey was that nearly half of those surveyed anticipated becoming a victim of cybercrime in the next 12 months. More importantly, 40% of those surveyed identified that they had already been infected by a virus or malware. And so for the first time in a long time, what we have seen is that ranking higher than things such as online fraud and property damage, to the top of the list has risen the concern that these small and medium-sized businesses have on cybersecurity. And then, as you mentioned earlier, it's compounded by the fact that we race to put digital solutions in place and adopt technology faster and faster. However, one of the positive trends that we've seen is that our Canadians are on the right track. And so these small and medium-sized businesses are more attuned to their changing environment, and they're paying attention to the new challenges as they emerge. They're also responding to these risks with the resilience and determination that we've come to expect of Canadian organizations. 86% of them reported that they're more knowledgeable about threats, and 68% of them have said that they believe they're prepared for a potential cyber threat. The only issue is, can we really expect our small organizations to be cybersecurity experts on top of everything they have to do day to day to manage and grow their business? The reality is, given these constraints, one trend is concerning. What we've noticed in our survey is that 57% of these business owners are handling cyber themselves. 23% of them rely on in-house IT teams, and only 20% of them are outsourcing the service. So given all of these results, it becomes really important to educate small and medium-sized businesses and then services that they can leverage.
How well protected and educated do you think individual Canadians are on average? And what else can we be doing, those of us in the cybersecurity field, governments, organizations, et cetera, educational institutions, to really raise awareness about cybersecurity and help educate? What can we do?
I don't have a recent study to determine how other Canadians, how educated and how protected Canadians are. I do have data points from global data points. And so if I look at 2020, our investigations, real or suspected threat activity increased 45% from 2019. More importantly, across all industries globally in 2020, there were more than 37 billion data records breached. There was an increase, a 600% increase in phishing attacks, and a 4,000% increase in ransomware attacks. And so if we just extrapolate that and we look at just Canadians for that survey, then it's become more and more important that we protect and educate Canadians. Now, you mentioned institutions and academia, and one of the things that RBC did just before the pandemic is we believed there needed to be an organization that would help craft cybersecurity and digital privacy policies in Canada. So we struck a partnership with Ryerson Leadership Lab and Rogers Cybersecurity Catalyst. We're on to the next phase of that partnership. So we've created a Cybersecure Policy Exchange, CPX. In the next 12 months, CPX will host a number of public engagement initiatives, convene roundtables, and industry policy experts with industry policy experts. And ultimately, this group is going to make recommendations. It has 3 areas of focus. Number 1, social media in Canada. Number 2, Internet of Things devices. And 3, biometric and facial recognition technologies. Because maintaining trust with our clients is really critical. And we need to continue to take all of us to work together to keep organizations and clients safe and secure. Governments can start collaborating and offering decentralized identity solutions, and we've seen that across the provinces. Specifically, Ontario has announced that in 2022 they will also be launching a digital identity service. And we have to look at identity as more than just a human being. It's artificial intelligence solutions and other increased automations, and identity just is not simply a person. We also need to ensure that our teams and our solutions are as diverse as the world that we're offering and the people in this world. And so things that small businesses need to look at are working with their consumers and taking their feedback. And then most importantly, whatever we do, whatever we build, we need to think about the ethical manner that we deploy and maintain cybersecurity solutions for the future, digital ethics.
So with all of this that we've just spoken about, in terms of calls to action, what needs to be done, right now, and of course by who, to best protect Canadian individuals, institutions, businesses against cyber threats? What are your top few things that organizations, governments, and individuals should be thinking about?
It's really education, awareness, growing our next generation of individuals, not only cyber individuals, but business individuals who come to market, focusing on academia and institutions as we do so. But I think education would be the primary one, because once people are educated and collaborating together, I think that's the most important area that I would focus on. The one thing that I would like everybody to remember is solutions that are built for everyone should be built by everyone. If we work together and across geographic and organizational boundaries to build our solutions, then we will learn from each other and accelerate our ability to offer borderless secure solutions and help boost the Canadian economy.